For this run, I'm using seed ET7PXN. As you'll see, this seed is extremely special. There's a lot of little bonuses that go into getting a high score in Slay the Spire, but the biggest bonuses come from defeating as many elites as possible and doing it without taking damage. Last time I did a seeded high score run, the maximum number of elites you could fight was 15, or 5 per act. However, since then, there's been a new relic added. It's called Wing Boots. So Wing Boots let you ignore the path on the map 3 times. And if you use these 3 charges, you can get up to 1 more elite for a grand total of 16 if you have good enough map layouts. The thing is, it's really rare to be able to fight 16 elites. You need Wing Boots early enough, and you also need map layouts that allow you to fight those 16 elites. Turns out that something like 1 in 4 million seeds have the ability to fight 16 elites, and this is one of them. Now, you might have noticed me picking up that corruption at the first shop that we breezed past. If you saw my A15 high score video, you probably know what's coming next then. Yeah, this is gonna be another Dead Branch plus Corruption run, where I use what's probably the most powerful combo in the game to get relatively easy flawless victories. Unfortunately, this first elite fight against the sentries, as far as I can find, is completely impossible to beat without taking damage. You simply don't get offered the right cards or potions to make it happen on the first few floors. In fact, it's really a rather painful fight. I'm gonna come out of it with just 7 HP, but that's okay, because I'm not going to take any more damage for the entire rest of the act. Since here, we got our Dead Branch, and now our combo's online. I upgrade the Corruption. It's probably the only upgrade that actually really makes a difference in this run, letting me play, even in this fight, Bash and Corruption in the same turn. I fought all of the Act 1 fights at least 10 times now practicing for this run, so I pretty much have a set routine down for all of them. But unlike last time, this is not really the case for all of my fights. For most of them, my notes only say what to do for the first turn or 2, and then a couple additional details, and I kind of improvise from there. This did get me in trouble, since I had to abort 2 attempts in Act 3 because I just made a mistake playing the fights and had to start over. I really like that first Lagavulin fight, actually, where we get the body slam and we can do that really cool massive attack with the vulnerable. This fight is also pretty cool. I pick up a fire breathing just for fun. There's no reason I needed to play the fire breathing to win that fight, but I like how I routed it to do some exact lethals with the fire breathing and setting up for the whirlwind on the next turn. And now we finally picked up the Wing Boots. That's one of the key relics I was talking about earlier, and it'll give us that extra elite fight. And before the Wing Boots, we also got the Toxic Egg. It's also a very important relic in this run, actually. Maybe the most important other than Dead Branch for surviving in fights, because I pick up a ton of skills to survive until I get Corruption in play. And then once I get Corruption out, they really help me, you know, give me things to exhaust to go off. So having all of these skills upgraded is a really big deal. And so here, after floor 12, I decide to take a fight instead of going to the rest site. That's because, well, rest sites are really nice in a normal run, because upgrading a card or rest or healing is a really big deal. But in score runs, really resting doesn't do anything for your score. It's the worst thing you can do, actually. Because a normal fight is just worth 2 points baseline. And a question mark tile while you only get a score bonus if you visit 15 of them, which we're definitely not going to do with all of the elites we fight, they can give very useful things like relics and gold, and there's bonuses for having enough gold at the end of the run. So, really, we're going to try and avoid as many rest sites as we can. So, this is the last elite fight of the 4. Interestingly enough, we actually avoided fighting Gremlin Knob at all. We fought Sentries 3 times, and we fought Lagavulin twice. Whirlwind is really nice to have against Sentries in Act 1. And we pick up another Second Wind. Second Wind is a great card to have. It just helps us exhaust lots of things to use with Dead Branch. Gives us lots of block to help us survive. And it's really nice with all the curses that we're going to be picking up later in the run. And we're already here at the boss. You know, I'm playing relatively quickly when I can, because there's that nice 50-point bonus for finishing in under 45 minutes. I'm going to comfortably make it in under 45 minutes, but it really doesn't hurt to be efficient, and a lot of it just comes down to my habits in speedrunning this game. The slime boss fight is one of those fights where I did go ahead and plan out exactly what I'm going to play and in what order. That helps me barely survive the big attack without taking damage, and then draw that immolate twice in a row to get the nice, kind of picturesque finish to the fight. I skipped the rare card reward because I'm going for a score bonus called Popper, which provides 50 points as long as I end the game with no rare cards in my deck. I'm not going to be able to remove a rare card I take, because that's just how the gold is working out in all the shops. But, so it's just best to skip all of them. And then for my boss relic, Curse Key is the clear best choice. It gives more energy, which is always better, especially when you have infinite cards to play. And it also adds curses to your deck, which is really important for score. You need 5 curses to get a whopping 100-point bonus, well, fittingly called curses. And Curse Key is going to get us there. We're not going to be able to get 5 curses without the curses we get from the chest with Curse Key. In fact, we're going to end up with 7 curses in our deck at the end of the run, and the reason why will become apparent later. So we just fought the birds, and then after the birds, there is the Woman in Blue event. So from what I remember, it's very important that I buy exactly 1 potion at that event. I need more potions, and I won't get a fruit juice later, which I need to hit 110 maximum HP by the end of the run. The power potion is also going to come in handy very soon, against the first elite fight of this act, and you'll see why. Now this first cultist fight is a great example of a fight I did not bother scripting at all. It's actually possible to take 0 damage in this fight if you play it, you know, I guess properly. But really, taking damage from a random hallway fight doesn't affect your score in any way, so I just don't bother doing it. It's not like I'm in danger of dying if I'm taking 0 damage from any of the elites anyway. And now, we fight Snecko. There's no reason to play my skills that'll exhaust anyway there, and that gives us a nice turn too. I am kind of paying attention to my pen nib counter, but really it's not important. The pen nib counter will kind of naturally line up in places where I expect it to be, because, you know, pen nibbing a big attack will naturally finish the fight, and if you play a few little attacks before you pen nib the big attack, it'll automatically kind of make the pen nib line up. So I didn't really worry about exactly what my pen nib counts were, except at a few very specific points in the run. And now here is the corruption that we get from that potion we grabbed earlier from the Woman in Blue event. And that corruption is going to allow us to win this fight. You can see there how Havoc gives us a nice free Whirlwind. That's a really cool interaction, where if you play a Whirlwind with Havoc, it does damage based on your current energy, but it doesn't actually use your current energy. And then, this is another one of those scripted fights. I knew that if I played Havoc right there, it would hit my second wind, and I would get a really nice body slam to finish. And then, part of the routing that goes into this is knowing exactly how many cards I want to have for each fight. I can manipulate that by buying a different number of cards at each store, or not taking some card rewards after certain fights. In fact, this is one of the fights where I'm going to skip a card reward to make some of the fights line up better with the draws that I want. And there's a really nice 2-turn kill aided by a pendiv that I sort of set up in the last 2 fights. The second Book of Stabbing fight is also a nice, cool fight. I need to play turn 1 exactly the way I do. Well, I don't really need to play Fire Breathing, but I need to play Second Wind first, and then get back the Feel No Pain with my Exhume in order to not take damage in the first 2 turns without using my potion. It really demonstrates the power of seeded runs, too. I know I can exhaust my Feel No Pain since I'll get it back immediately with Exhume anyway, but in a real run you would never, or at least I would never, actually not play my Feel No Pain before playing my second wind. Because why would I know that I need to exhaust exactly 1 extra card? It's just one of those things that goes into routing a seeded run. I can play a fight over and over again, especially abusing the glitch where if you save and quit a run and then reload it, it starts you back at the beginning of the fight. So I use that a lot to be able to find the right route through a fight that I thought was especially tricky. So I should probably talk about how I'm choosing my card rewards now. On my Ascension 15 score run, I got the Highlander bonus. This score bonus gives you 100 points for having no non-basic duplicate cards in my deck. So I took a different card every time. This run, I'm not going for the Highlander bonus. Instead, I'm going for collector bonuses, which are mutually exclusive with the Highlander bonus. You get 1 collector bonus for each card that you end the run with 4 copies in your deck. So, Highlander was worth 100 points, and Collector is worth 25 points per set of 4 cards. So Collector is more points than Highlander as long as you get at least 5 sets of cards. And in this run, I'm going to get 6 sets, so there's no reason to go for Highlander. Right now, the only set I have finished is Second Wind. I've got 4 copies of that. But in Act 3, and a little bit here at the end of Act 2, and I've actually already done some, we're going to do some RNG manipulation to make sure we get the cards I need to get all of these 6 sets finished. And now is probably a good time actually to talk about how the RNG works in this game. Roughly, what happens is, based on your seed, the game has a bunch of sequences of numbers that it uses for different aspects of randomness in the game. The biggest one we're concerned about for high score is the one called card RNG. Now when the game wants to give you card rewards, it basically takes the next random number from card RNG, and then first it uses it to decide what rarity of card to give you. And then once it's decided what rarity to give you, it takes another number from card RNG to decide which card to give you from that rarity. And then that's the first card you get. And then it repeats that for your next 2 cards, so you get 3 cards in your card reward, or 4 if you have the question mark card. And then, after you've got these 3 cards, it then asks for up to three more numbers from card RNG, and those will tell you whether or not your cards are upgraded. So usually, your card rewards are determined by a sequence of 9 numbers from card RNG. Nothing you do inside a combat is supposed to be able to ask for numbers from card RNG, because if it did, then you could just change your card rewards by extending combat longer and playing more cards that have random effects. And that's generally how it works, at least since last patch, when some bugs were fixed, because before last patch actually, every time you played True Grit or Fiendfire with it would ask for one or more cards from card RNG. So by playing True Grit multiple times in a fight, you could change what card rewards you would get at the end of that fight. So True Grit and Fiendfire were fixed last patch, but the devs missed one case. There's still one card available to Ironclad that you can play to get a number from card RNG and change your future card rewards. That card is Havoc. Every time you play Havoc, it asks for one number from card RNG. That number is used to figure out what the random target for the Havoc card will be. So by playing Havoc a particular number of times in combat, I can change what card rewards I'm going to get. Because of this bug, the number of times I play Havoc in each combat for the entire run has been very, very carefully mapped out in order to force all of those sweet collector bonuses to show up. Whenever I'm pausing to look at my notes in Act 3, and I'm doing it a lot in Act 3, I'm sorry about that, I'm probably trying to figure out how many more Havocs I need to play before killing the enemy, and how many I've already played, and sometimes even just which card reward I'm supposed to pick up to get the right collector bonus. In fact, all those aborted run attempts I mentioned earlier, so I actually had to abandon 2 runs on this fight on floor 38. It doesn't matter if I take damage in this fight, but what does matter is that I play Havoc exactly 1 time. So I kept accidentally killing all the enemies before I played Havoc, and then that would give me different cards from card rewards from this combat from what I need to finish the game with the right number of collector bonuses. At the previous shop, we bought our second copy of Havoc. It just so happens that in this fight, the first Havoc you encounter is a pretty significant way through our deck. And we're going to draw it right now, and if I play the Shrug It Off, they'll even give me a Corruption, which is a pretty cool way to finish the fight. This fight was also one of the few fights where I set up a pen nib. I wanted a pen nibs so that that first Thunderclap I played on turn 1 would do a lot of damage and kill one of the enemies. And then, once that enemy was dead, I would have fewer dazes shuffled into my draw pile, which would allow the later turns to play out the way I wanted them. So, if early on it seemed like I was stalling out fights and it had nothing to do with Havoc, it was probably actually to set up my pen nib counter for floor 38. Now another thing that I bought at that last shop where I had just bought Havoc is Darkstone Periapt. This is another relic that is very important for score. Now, as I mentioned before, I want to accrue a lot of curses in this run, because having 5 curses at the end of the run gives me 100 points for the curses modifier. But Darkstone Periapt not only synergizes with getting curses, but it provides one more important thing for score. It allows me to have extra max HP at the end of the run. On Ironclad, if you end the run with at least 95 maximum HP, you get a 25-point score bonus called Well Fed. But if you have at least 110 maximum HP, this bonus is increased to 50, and the bonus is called Stuffed. In my Ascension 15 run, I got to 110 maximum HP, mainly by playing copies of Feed that were created by Dead Branch. Even though I have Dead Branch in this run, it's no longer possible to get Feed from a Dead Branch, so I had to look at other avenues of getting enough maximum HP. The best source of maximum HP is Darkstone Periac, since I need curses anyway for a high score. I'm going to be picking up 5 curses in the rest of Act 3. In fact, I already picked up 2 of them, and I'll talk about that in a second. And those 5 curses will give me a total of 30 maximum HP, bringing me up to the 110 maximum HP that I need at the very end of the run. So the first 2 curses came from the Mind Bloom event, which is the most important event for score runs. It used to be that way since you could fight a boss, and fighting an extra boss gave you the full score bonus for defeating a boss. And so, back when it was only Ascension 15, you would fight 3 bosses and get 300 points for defeating 3 bosses. And if you got the boss in Mind Bloom, that would be 4 bosses, which would give you 500 points. If it still worked that way, then fighting 5 bosses would give me 750 points, and that would be an insane number of points. But Mind Bloom no longer gives you points for fighting additional bosses. Instead, we're going to be taking the third option in Mind Bloom, which is called I Am Rich. It gives you 999 gold and 2 copies of Normality, which is probably the most painful curse in the game. We want those 2 copies of Normality because we need both 5 curses. We're actually going to get 7, so we don't really need the Normality for that. But we're going to actually get a collector bonus on Normality. From the 2 chests that will open up soon, we manipulate the RNG so that both of those chests contain a copy of Normality. In fact, the Havocs that I'm playing in this fight are part of the manipulation I need for this next chest that's coming up right after this combat to give me a copy of Normality. And then I'll manipulate 1 more copy of Normality later. And then, of course, on top of having these curses for the curses bonus and the collector bonus, we of course, as I said, need them for the maximum HP bonus at the end of the run. So, just from the 2 copies of Normality, Mind Bloom is essentially giving us 25 extra points due to having extra maximum HP at the end of the run. But there's another reason Mind Bloom is good, and that's the 999 gold it's also giving us. Now, many people know that if you get at least 1,000 points, 1,000 gold over the course of a run, then you get a score bonus of 25 points. But fewer people probably know that this bonus improves to 50 points if you get at least 2,000 gold. In fact, it improves further to 75 points if you get 3,000 gold, but getting 3,000 gold is completely impossible in the vast majority of runs. So, that's definitely not something we're going to be able to go for. However, I Am Rich is giving us a whole 25 points all by itself, by bringing us from about a little over 1,000 gold accrued over the course of the run to a little over 2,000 gold over the course of the run. So with the maximum HP and also the gold that it gives us, Mind Bloom is essentially providing 50 points all by itself. So that's huge for an event. In fact, there's one more thing about Mind Bloom that makes this seed extra good. You can only get the curses for gold in Mind Bloom if you encounter Mind Bloom in the first half of the act. So not only did we need to encounter Mind Bloom for a perfect seed, we needed to encounter it about as early as we did, or the third option would change into something else. And that's about pretty much it when it comes to overarching notes about this run. From here on out, all these combats are basically about playing the right number of havocs each turn, while being careful not to accidentally take damage. I know the exact pattern of each enemy, and my deck is saturated with those high-quality block cards, so there is little risk of taking damage. The important thing is just to play the right number of copies of Havoc to get that second copy of normality there. Very important. And really just knowing when the normalities are going to be drawn, playing around them a little bit, mostly improvising other than that. This fight against Reptomancer, I actually do have to use that draw potion that I've been saving all the way since Act 1. This allows me to kill both of those enemies before normality locks me out from playing any more cards that turn. That's really the only problematic thing about this fight. After that, it's very straightforward to finish. I do need to play the right number of Havocs, though, to get... Actually, I'm done playing the right number of Havocs. I have all of the collector bonuses I need for the run. So from here, it's basically about just finishing the Reptomancer. Sorry. I'm thinking of the next fight. So against Reptomancer, I did need to play exactly that number of Havocs to get my last copy of Havoc, which completes my last collector bonus. So now I have 6 collector bonuses. All that's left is to get one more card reward, and having one more card will bring me to 50 cards. And if I have a deck of 50 cards at the end of the run, then I get another score bonus called Encyclopedian. And so that's another reason why I took all of those curses. They helped me get to exactly 50 cards. And Orrery, the second boss relic I took, is also very important for getting to 50 cards. It provides 4 cards all by itself. I skipped one of them for manipulation of deck size later on, and because I didn't need it for any of my collector bonuses. So that's it for all the elites. I'm done with elites. I pick up one more Swift Potion, and I pick up my last card. Actually, this is where I realized that I think I made a mistake somewhere earlier. I was expecting to use Entropic Brew at some point, which would have given me a power potion for this fight. I want a power potion for this fight because if I use a power potion here, at the very beginning, it will give me a copy of Barricade, and then having that Barricade just makes this entire fight a breeze. Especially since I'm not going to get a copy of Feel No Pain in play for a long time, which is a little bit scary. Luckily, very luckily, everything works out anyway. I kind of just wing it in this fight, and I realize I maybe could have gotten a power potion anyway by using my Entropic Brew at the very beginning, but it's alright. The power I get isn't corruption anymore. The power I get is now demon form, but that turns out to be enough to beat this fight without taking damage, even though it just requires me to get pretty lucky with the type of attacks that the Time Meter does throughout the fight. So while I clean up this Time Meter fight and go into the next fight, I should probably talk about what makes the seed a little less than perfect for high score. there's just a few things that aren't 100% optimal, even though this is the best seed I found looking through the first approximately 2 billion seeds for Ironclad. So the first thing that isn't quite optimal, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is that we fail to beat our first elite fight without taking damage. Each perfect elite fight is worth 25 points, which is doubled by the Ascension bonus, so this costs us, in theory, 50 points from optimal. Then, although 16 elite fights is the maximum possible number, it is actually better to have 6 elite fights in Act 3 rather than 6 elite fights in Act 2 as we had this run. If we could have fought 6 in Act 3, this would have gotten us 10 extra points, again doubled to 20 by the Ascension 20 modifier. So that's 70 points we could have had. Finally, it's probably possible to get up to about 10 collector bonuses, in theory, with some really fortunate card rewards. Compared to our 6 collector bonuses, that would give us 100 extra points, and these points are not doubled by the Ascension 20 score modifier, so that's just 100 points. If we add it all up, if we were to find the absolutely perfect, theoretically optimal seed, we could probably, in theory, improve our score by around 170 points, with maybe up to like about 200 points maybe with 11 collector bonuses. Maybe that's somehow possible, and a few additional fights, because each additional fight also gives you 2 more points. But we're, in this run, very close to what I think is the theoretical maximum for score. So when you see those 6,000 point scores on the leaderboard, just keep that in mind. It's definitely not possible to do that without cheating in some way. So this fight, it's actually fine to take damage against the Awakened one, since I did complete the first 3 boss fights without taking damage. And the point score, the bonus for Beyond Perfect only cares about you defeating 3 bosses without taking damage. It doesn't care which 3 they are. So in this run, the 3 that I defeated without taking damage were the first 3, and then I didn't really bother caring about taking damage against the Awakened one. And he goes down without too much trouble anyway. So here's the reveal of 4,000 points. A really nice, even number to round out the run. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Ironclad high score run. I'm just going to hover over each of the bonuses to remind you about what they are. And that's a 4,000 point Ironclad run.